This Monday morning edition of Pucks Across Borders brought to you by none other than First Round Collectibles. Right now, with promo code Sports Addict, you get 10% off whatever sports card your heart desires. What's your sport? Hockey, football, basketball, baseball, maybe wrestling, maybe even boxing, whatever it is, you can get it at firstroundcollectibles.com. And right now, they still have some sales items left over from Christmas, up to 50% off multiple cards, multiple sports. And with the promo code Sports Addict, not only do you get 10% off of regular priced items, but also 10% off of the sale items as well. Whether it's regular price, whether it's sales, doesn't matter. You get 10% off with the promo code Sports Addict. Go to firstroundcollectibles.com and find your heroes. That's the number one, STRoundcollectibles.com. First Round Collectibles, sports cards for sports fans.
Yeah. Let's go. We just gotta go hard. I go the hardest. I bring the pain. Not what you used to. It's all part of the game. Yeah. I just gotta go hard. I just gotta go hard. Go hard. Go hard. Yeah. Oh yeah, the beast back. Adrenaline pumping through my veins. Can't relax. Original. I am not the same as these cats. I sting them.
And good morning. Welcome to Pucks Across Borders on Sports Addict Live and Total Apex Sports, whether it's on X or YouTube, Total Apex or Sports Addict Live. Thank you for joining us. It is good to be back. Crazy weekend. I feel like we always say it, but it's always true. Lots to get to, as well as 4 games in the NHL tonight. But first, I'm your host, Mark Sauter. Again, good to be here. And the other hosts on the show at the top of your screen. You read his work about the NFL. Maybe you'll be writing about T. Higgins just getting franchise tagged, as I saw across my notifications just now. Who knows? But John, how you doing, man? Good to see you. Looking fresh, man.
Yeah, I had to get it up.
You, yeah.
Had to upgrade the appearance a little bit. I noticed on our past podcast the beard was getting a little long. And I'm going out to warmer weather soon, so can't have any extra hair on the beard and on top. So feeling fresh and ready to go. Hoping the Devils get a fresh start heading out west as well.
Yeah, I was telling you pre-show, my beard does the same thing yours does. It's like once it gets a bit long, the lips get a little covered up, the mustache gets a little. I definitely feel it, man. The beard life, it's a nice life, but it's a hard life. At the bottom of your screen, you read his work about the NFL on Gridiron Heroics, winners and whiners as well. You see him talk about the NBA, the NFL, college hoops. He talks about it all. Andre, how you feeling on a Monday morning, bro?
I've had worse Monday mornings for sure. Doing pretty well. It's a good weekend for sports. Good weekend in general. Weather's kind of nice. Eerily quiet where I'm at, but it's fine. Life is moving.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So let's just dive right into it. Great weekend of hockey as always this past weekend. Let's do a quick little trip around the standings, and I'm sure a lot of this will come up in our conversation. In the East, you got Detroit and Tampa in the wild card spots. Detroit with 70 points, Tampa with 69, both 4 points and 5 points respectively back of the Toronto Maple Leafs in third spot in the Atlantic. You got the Rangers, Carolina, Philly still all in the top 3 in the Met, with the Devils 62 points, Washington 61, Pittsburgh 60, Islanders 60, and Buffalo 58. Huh? Should we throw out some Buffalo playoff odds? I don't think so, but hey, it's, I guess, worth a
They're in
look.
single digits.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Shout out to Big Ten Gabriel commenting, Total Apex very own. So yeah, and then fast forward, or not fast forward, but move over to the West, where the Jets are back to within 1 point of the Central lead. They have 77 points behind Dallas is 78, Colorado 75. So the top three in the Central is fascinating, as it has been for the better part of the season. You got the Kings 2 points back of third. This is fascinating to me, and I'm just kind of noticing it now. But you got Vancouver with 82 points in the Pacific, which we feel like they're going to win the Pacific in the last couple months or month and a half now of the season. That feels like a lock. But Vegas number 2 at 71, Edmonton 68, Kings 68. And then in the last wild card spot, Nashville 66, St. Louis, Minnesota, both with 62, Calgary 61, Seattle 59. So that Pacific, those 2, 3, and then the wild card, not as separated as it once was. So lots and lots to get into. But let's get into our takeaways for the weekend. Andre, we'll start with you, man. What caught your eye in the NHL this weekend?
Yeah, I think what caught my eye is something that caught all of our attention over the weekend, at least based on our conversations. And it was the Flyers penalty kill,
Oof.
or I guess you could say the Flyers special teams in general. Tenacious, nasty group that is more dangerous than their power play and more dangerous than, I mean, the team 5-on-5. I'd say the most dangerous part of this Flyers team offensively is when they're shorthanded. Against the Rangers on Saturday, had a 2-0 opportunity breakaway to tie the game. Didn't cash in on that, but that was in the third period. And that was not long after I told Mark, hey, if the Rangers get another power play, bet on the Flyers money line because they're going to score. Earlier in that game, they also had a really good scoring opportunity. I think it was a 2-on-1. Yesterday against the Penguins, they let up 2 goals because apparently they suck now. But in all seriousness, they got a shorthanded goal. They're 14th of the season, I believe. Whereas the power play for the entire year only has 24. The power play is 31st. When the Flyers are shorthanded, they turn into rabid dogs. It's insane to watch. It's see puck, get puck, and then from there, it's play hockey, try to score. I've seen a lot of really good penalty kills. I don't know if I've ever seen one that rabid and tenacious, whereas the rest of the team isn't usually like that. Without like Boston's PK in years past has been like that, where it's dangerous, they can score at any given time. I don't think I've ever seen it's like a switch that flips compared to when the team is 5-on-5 or on the power play or whatever. Because the Bruins also had the 5-on-5 in power play, lethal abilities, if you will.
Well, and I feel like you got to mention, talking about the penalty kill, you got to talk about how awful the power play is too. Like that's the thing about it for me that's so funny is that like the penalty kill is phenomenal. As you mentioned, they have the most shorthanded goals in the league. They have 14 shorthanded goals, maybe 15 after yesterday. I feel like it's 14, but it might be 15 after yesterday. Only 24 power play goals. And they had a 4-minute power play yesterday, losing to the Penguins. And I believe that game was on TNT, and the TNT crew, they're saying like, well, this is exactly what the Flyers need, 4-minute power play. It's like, have you watched this team? Like, this is not what they need at all. Like they need a penalty kill, like you said, Andre. Like it's crazy how contrast those two special teams are. It's absolutely wild. John, what about you, man? What's your takeaway in the NHL this past weekend?
It's just to wrap up that point quickly. It blows my mind that they are the worst power play team and the second best PK team. It's like
It's crazy.
you could not be a more polar opposite special teams unit. All right, so getting to my takeaway, Andre covered one of the teams definitely worth talking about this weekend. I'm going to cover two more that are both in interesting positions in the playoff picture. I'm going to talk about the two teams that were or I guess still are, the 8th seeds in each conference, respectively, the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Nashville Predators. Nashville came into the weekend on a very good streak. They had 1 free streak going into the weekend, and they took care of the business that, quite frankly, they should be taking care of, with 2 nice victories over the weekend against the Sharks and the Ducks. Now, after a nice winning streak, especially beating Vegas earlier in the road trip, you might think Nashville would be susceptible to losing to one of the more mediocre teams in the league, but Nashville's really held their own. I got to give them a lot of credit. They're winning the games they're supposed to win, which is really what you need to do to be a playoff team. I'm speaking in cliches, but in the standings, they're proving to be a ferocious unit right now. They're getting some breathing room in that Western Conference playoff picture. I believe now up by 4 points over the St. Louis Blues, and the Minnesota Wild quietly sneaking up. And Calgary's right on their tail as well. So tight playoff race. I thought Nashville had a huge weekend, did what they're supposed to do. And I think it's just a little ironic here because 3 of the teams that Nashville's been out west for a while. I mean, besides Vegas, they've played the Kings, the Sharks, and the Ducks. And they're 3 teams. Those 3 teams are 3 my Devils are going to have to beat in the next week to keep their playoff hopes alive. So I'm hoping that the Devils can copy Nashville's success. On the other side, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning. They weren't coming into this weekend on a good note. They had lost 2 games 2 or 3 games in a row. 2 of them I was shocked they lost, with Ottawa and Washington. I thought this was a big weekend for Tampa Bay. They were playing 2 teams that were chasing them in the playoff picture. I believe they were only up by 5 points over the Devils and Islanders going into the weekend. And the Devils won on Saturday afternoon against Montreal. So there was definitely a lot of pressure on Tampa Bay to keep going. And they got off to a great start against the Islanders, and in Tampa Bay fashion, almost blew that game thanks to defense and goaltending. But luckily for the Lightning, held on to dear life. And the next day in a game where neither team had remotely their best goaltender on the ice, Tampa Bay took care of it in easy fashion. My takeaway is both 8 seeds won the games they needed to this weekend, especially Tampa Bay. Shout out to them at the cost of my team. But Tampa Bay's keeping other playoff contenders at bay, and they're starting to look more and more solid as the games go on as a playoff team.
It's weird with Tampa though, right? Like, you watched that game close to yesterday, John, since they were playing your team, but like they didn't look spectacular at any point in that game. Like, Tampa,
just good enough to hold them off.
Yeah, and like their big boys get the points they need to get, right? Like Hagel had a good day yesterday. Kucherov, ho-hum, another 4-point game for him. Like they just get the job done, but you're not blown away by watching them. Like, you're just like what is this team? Yeah, good stuff. Going to my takeaway. Now, listen, if you watch this show, you know that I'm a huge Maple Leaf fan. You know that I have a hard time not talking about the Maple Leafs. We had a big week last week. Lots of Leaf talk to go around last week. I would love to talk about how they beat Colorado for their 7th straight win, but I'm not going to do that because all eyeballs were in Chicago last night. Absolutely has to be mentioned. Chris Chelios gets his number 7 retired by the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, I'm a little bit older than you guys. I don't know how much you remember watching Chris Chelios. Of course, I was not alive for his Stanley Cup win in Montreal in '86, but I definitely remember him watching him in the 90s. And of course, in the 2000s, had a terrific playing career, playing from 86 or 84 rather to 2010. Just such an incredible player, an incredible run. A lot of people call him the best American-born hockey player in NHL history. That's a fun debate to have. But just a phenomenal career. 948 points across 1,651 total games. Not all of those in the NHL. 11-time All-Star, 3-time Norris Trophy winner, 3-time Stanley Cup champion, once with Montreal, twice with Detroit back in 2022 and 2008. I believe one of those was against your Devils, no, John? If I remember correct. Oh, no, because they would have been in the East at that point in time. Never mind. I digress. Just a terrific player. Really cool to see him honored in Chicago last night. Now, the celebration was twofold because Patrick Kane was back. Very cool to see Chelios, by the way, get his number retired against Detroit, where he had success in Detroit as well as Chicago, but obviously 2 cups in Detroit that he didn't have in Chicago. So that was a really nice touch. But yes, Patrick Kane was back, being celebrated by the Blackhawks as well. A huge standing ovation for him, the video montage, the whole bit, and how fitting to round off the day. Patrick Kane with the overtime winner. Just a really cool moment, really beautiful moment. A historic rivalry between those two teams. You get Chris Chelios, who played for both teams, getting his number retired, and then Patrick Kane, who obviously played for both teams, getting the overtime winner. The Chicago Blackhawks continuing their trend towards another first round, not even first round draft pick, but first overall draft pick. And Detroit just continuing to win and march their way towards the Stanley Cup playoffs. So, and I mean, on that note, big weekend for Detroit too, right? Like they beat Seattle 6-1. They beat Detroit 3-2 in overtime. That was a game that they were begging to cough up, and they ended up getting the game tying goal late in the third. So big 4-point weekend for Detroit. As we talked about at the beginning of the show, just, yeah, they're in the wild card spot, but they're 4 points back of third place in that Atlantic Division, right? Like this team just keeps winning, and it's really fun to see. And I mean, listen, I'm looking at the standings and just in the East, man, like if the playoffs ended today, Boston, Tampa, Rangers, Detroit, Florida, Toronto, Carolina, Philly, like what matchup of those is not awesome? Like they're all like all these matchups are just really compelling. And it's shaping up for a fun month and a half to round out the season. All right. Let's move on to our bad beats. Now, it's been a long weekend. Let's think back as long as we can. Andre, we'll start with you, man. What is a bad beat that you had this weekend?
Yeah, ignoring Friday's brutal bad beat in Edmonton as a collective, I'm going to go to yesterday. I made a little parlay, Rangers 60-minute line. I threw the Canes money line in there. Just a twofer, little top of the Metro hedge for me. And, well, the Rangers lost, so it helps me that the Canes lost, but also the Canes lost in a shootout to the freaking Sabres. Literally, it was just the money line. All they needed to do was win. They took a lead in the third period with like 5 minutes left. I think they allowed the tying goal less than a minute later, if I remember correctly. Didn't score in overtime. It was just, Carolina, what are you doing? Aren't you supposed to be gunning for the top of the division? Like, you had a golden chance right there. Credit to the Sabres for winning 3 in a row, but I don't know. I just don't expect Carolina to take a lead with 5 minutes left, cough it up immediately after, and then not be able to capitalize again in overtime. Like, they're way more talented than the Sabres. They had however many chances in the shootout, just nothing. So
Yeah.
that's my bad beat.
Well, I have no stats in front of me to look this up. I'm sure we could do a deep dive and figure this out factually. But I feel like Sundays are the most unpredictable days in the NHL. I just feel like it's the end of the week. Like, who knows or it's the beginning of the week, depending. I don't know. But you know what I'm trying to say. Like, it's like they just feel like a weird day because my bad beat was yesterday, just in general. I didn't bet the Tampa Bay and New Jersey game. I felt like that game was like a real coin flip game. So I didn't bet it. I thought that the Devils, like, I guess you can argue the Devils being favored at home, but I thought they were pretty heavy favorites, heavier than I would have personally made them. And I just felt to kind of stay away from it. But I bet Philadelphia. They were plus 142 against Pittsburgh. I bet Philly. That game was insane, but that lost. I bet Detroit to win in regulation. That didn't hit. I bet the Rangers to win in regulation. That didn't hit. I bet Carolina to win, not in regulation, but to win. I think by 2. I can't remember what that one was, but that didn't hit. Nashville, made a little money back on Nashville at the end of the night, but just yesterday in general was was a bad beat for me. John, what about you, man? What's your bad beat?
So I was a little late to this is a game that took place yesterday as well. So we're all going for Sunday here. This is one I didn't get a chance to look at closely until the middle of until like the first period because I was a little late turning on my TV. But I'm going to shout out the Devils Lightning here, and not for the bet you might think. So Andre and I were talking about this pre-show because I was looking at I was telling him how like odd that game was yesterday, and we were texting back and forth about the goaltenders on each side yesterday. Because during the game, I had noticed the Devils were pretty heavy favorites, which you mentioned, and I was very surprised about. And then we kind of came to the conclusion it was because Vasilevsky wasn't playing for Tampa Bay. Okay, fine, that makes sense. But for the Devils, it was like they also did not have their best goaltender out there because it was Akira Schmid behind the net for the first time in over 2 months. So he had been sent down to the AHL earlier this year. I guess he recently came back up, which I admittedly did not even know he came back up to the team until yesterday. Anyway, the point is you have two B or C goaltenders, let's just put it that way, behind the net. So you would think over 6.5 or over 7 for these two teams, Tampa and New Jersey, would be pretty reliable. And to emphasize this, yesterday, the over 6.5 in most sports books was around minus 140. Even if you wanted to bump it up to over 7, I think if we were doing this show today, if we were doing that game on the show today, I wouldn't have been opposed to it. Like going over 7, knowing the goaltenders for each side. Yet, there were 5 goals in that game. Just 5. And mostly it was because the Devils didn't show up. They scored 1 goal when Vasilevsky wasn't behind the net. I think this is partially airing out my grievances with the team a little bit. And also because I think I'm just confirming we don't have a reliable goaltender because you mentioned it and I agree. Schmidt did not look good yesterday either. And the team in front of him did no favors. But yeah, I would argue that was a game sports books must have made a lot of money on because they were heavily juiced up odds on the Devils side, not only for the money line, but for over and a total, which I didn't look at the public betting, but I guarantee you almost everybody that would bet that game would have taken the over, and I wouldn't have blamed them. So I would say that was a bad beat for hockey bettors in general and Devils fans.
Unless you bet Tampa, and then you did okay. I guess, like, my question to you, and I mean, we can talk about this later. I don't want to get too lost in the weeds here, but like, why was he called up? Like I don't. I mean, I don't know what like Vanacek's kind of status is. I know that Dawes has been playing a lot of hockey lately. I get it, but you're fighting for your life right now, and you're bringing up a goaltender who hasn't played in 2 months. Like, why? Like, if you
I
have two
think
goalies there, like,
I think
can you answer
Vanacek's
that?
on injured reserve.
Oh, is he okay? Well, then that answers the question.
Yeah,
Fair
I
enough.
guess Dawes just needed a day off because this was their third game in 4 days.
Yeah,
So I guess it's just like the Devils really don't have a lot of options at goaltender,
yeah,
or at goalie.
yeah. And it's tough too. Like when you know you have a goaltender back there who was set down for a reason. Um, you know, you need to play better in front of him, and that defense is just so thin right now. The more and more the season goes on, the more and more you are really seeing that hole that Dougie Hamilton left. I almost said that Scott Stevens left, but he left that hole like 20 years
Feels like
ago. So.
Scott Stevens right now.
All right, let's move on to our preview of the 4 games on the ice tonight, starting with a kind of interesting game. Pardon me. Ottawa in Washington. Excuse me. Washington minus 102 underdogs at home. Ottawa minus 118. The over is 6.5 at minus 102. The under is minus 118. Minus 1.5 for Ottawa is plus 200. Plus 1.5 for the Capitals is minus 245. Andre, we'll start with you on this one, man. What do you see here in this game? You got both teams that like we feel like aren't good, but I mean, Washington won't die, and Ottawa is doing its notorious. It's the end of the year, so we're gonna fool you. What do you see in this game, man?
Yeah, both of these teams are on a 4-game point streak, which is insanity. 3-0-1 for both of them. Ottawa's lone loss was in OT against the Panthers. Washington's lone loss was in OT against the Panthers. So two teams playing really well, save for one team in Sunrise taking them down. Uh, I don't understand why Ottawa's favored here, not on the road. Doesn't really make sense to me. And frankly, I'm just tired of the Capitals making me look stupid. So I'm hopping on the train. Capitals gonna make their push towards the playoffs. They're gonna win this one in overtime. Battle of hot teams. In all seriousness, Ottawa's very dependent on their goal scoring. It
Yes.
kind of dries up on the road. The Capitals, solid goaltending, solid PK, don't score very often, but they're playing the Senators. You got to think they're going to light the lamp a few times, even without Oshie. Uh, just you know, even with the way they've played this season, you got to think they have 3 or 4 in them. I think 3 or 4 is enough to win this game. Maybe not 4, but I think 3 is enough to win this game for the Capitals, or at least force overtime. So they haven't met since October. That was a 6-1 win in Ottawa for the Senators. This time it'll be a nice win for the Capitals on home ice. Give me that minus 102 for Washington and give me the under.
John, what about you, man? What do you see here?
Reluctantly, I'm going to back Andre on the Capitals money line here. I agree with him that this is a good matchup for the Capitals. I just noticed the Capitals tend to play well against teams that like are decent scoring teams, but terrible defensively and goaltending wise. I've noticed it with Tampa Bay and New Jersey. Washington just seems to have their number. And I think Ottawa's the worst version of both. So I would feel like, especially on home ice, Washington should have an advantage here. And the fact you're getting them at near even money, and might be even money by the time we get close to the puck drop,
Hmm.
I think it's a good sign. It's a very interesting contrast of style matchup here because Washington, decent, they're a solid enough goaltending team, in my opinion, the Capitals, whereas they're a horrible scoring team, typically. But Ottawa's like the exact opposite. Solid scoring team, but horrible defense goaltending team. But I feel like what Andre said, Washington should be able to put up a couple goals against Ottawa tonight. I like them to come out in a close game. Give me the Capitals.
Wow, John, I could see this from you, but Andre, I didn't think to be so polar opposite of you right off the bat. Not only do I like Ottawa to win this game, but I like them to cover the -1.5 at plus 200. And this is why
Bold
it might
early
be
tonight.
overthinking it. It might be overthinking it, but this is why. Ottawa 7-3 in the last 10 games. We've talked about this. This is what they do every year. They suck and underachieve. And then the end of the year, they overachieve and suck you back in, and then they suck again. It's just the cycle of Ottawa. This is what happens. So 7-3 in the last 10. 6 of those 7 wins, they have scored 4 or more goals. This is what Ottawa does. When they win, they score. That's just kind of how it is. Washington 3-1 in their last 4, 4-3 in their last 7. I think -1.5. There's a reason why it's plus 200. Yes, when Ottawa wins, they score, but when they win, they also allow goals too. So I feel like betting the over at -102 is also betting a Capitals win. So if you don't like the -1.5, but you do think that Ottawa will win, rather than taking the -118, I would recommend taking the over, because I do feel that if Ottawa wins, it will be over. That's my personal opinion. And I just think that as much as they can allow goals, Washington, not the craziest goal scoring team. That's just how it's been all year long. So I like the -1.5 Ottawa plus 200, and I like them winning like 5-3. I can see the over. But I really like the -1.5. It's just how I'm feeling. One kind of side note, Ovechkin, 3 goals, 6 points, 3 power play points in his last 5 games. So you have Ovi to scores plus 135, and Ovi to get a power play point. Where was it? I had it up here. Ovi to get a power play point is plus 195. So a little long shot bet. I know that their power play has been awful all year long, but it's starting to get better, starting to kind of come around. So those are a couple props that I like in this one, but my main one, Ottawa -1.5 and the over. So exactly opposite of you, Andre.
Mark, I have a proposal here.
Oh, all right.
Whichever team game, whichever country wins this game gets the right to be referred to as the nation's capital on this show exclusively until these teams meet again in April.
I like
So
that.
Ottawa,
Wait, sorry, repeat that again.
So whichever team wins, if the Senators win, we can only use the nation's capital to talk about Ottawa until they play again in April. If the Capitals win, we can only use the nation's capital to talk about DC until April.
I love it.
Until they play again.
Oh yeah, I guess that's true. Battle of the nation's capitals.
We got a little friendly wager going.
I love it. Let's throw $1,000 in there too, just to make it interesting.
We're putting the capital on the line. Is that not enough?
$1,000 for me is like $1 million American, so it's a way worse deal for me. So never mind that. Yeah, I like it. Let's move on to the New York Islanders are in Dallas. -175 are the Stars at home. Plus 145 are the Islanders on the road. -1.5 for Dallas is plus 140. Plus 1.5 for the Islanders is -166. The over is 6 at -118, and the under is -102. John, we'll start with you, man. What do you see here between the Islanders and the Stars.
I see this as a game the Islanders desperately need, but it can't come at a worse time.
Yeah.
Because like I felt like the Saturday loss was huge for the Islanders. They really needed to win that game. And they've lost a couple games I felt like they needed after beating the Penguins last week. And I'm not ready to say the Islanders are done yet. I'm not ready to have that conversation, but we're getting pretty close. Like, I think I'm even closer with the Islanders than the Devils right now, to the point where I think if they have a bad week, they could be done. But unfortunately, I think they match up terribly with Dallas. Like, Dallas is the fourth best scoring team in the league. The Islanders don't even average 3 goals a game. Like, there's a 0.7 goal scoring difference per game. Pretty extreme. Power play is actually near even. It's really the penalty kill that I've noticed a big gap. Like Dallas is over 82% on the penalty kill. The Islanders are really putrid on the PK, just over 71%. So I think the point I'm trying to make is I really don't like the way the Islanders match up here because Dallas has been a little more inconsistent later in the year with goaltending, but the Islanders, they allow 3.35 goals per game, especially going up against the fourth best scoring team in the league. I don't like this at all for them. I'm taking Dallas minus 1.5, and I believe that's at around plus 140. So I like that to hit tonight.
Yeah, I'm right there with you with the Dallas minus 1.5. Islanders 3-5 in the month of February. They've allowed 4+ goals in 4 straight games. This has Dallas minus 1.5 written all over it. I don't necessarily like. I mean, like the Islanders can score probably more so than other years. If I'm picking Dallas to win by 1.5, I don't know if I really like the over. Just I don't trust the goal scoring of the Islanders really, especially if they lose. But I do like Dallas minus 1.5. Unlike you, John, I'm ready to say that the Islanders are done. I think they are done. I think that Patrick Waugh has a lot of things to fix. And I think that he has been doing a good job. They've been better, but they're still like 3-5 this month. They're still very like mediocre. 7 points back of the Flyers. 9 points back of the Lightning. Excuse me. Rough throat this morning. I just don't see it with this team, man. Like, not only do you need Tampa Bay and Detroit and or Philly to regress, you also need the Devils to fade, Capitals to fade, Pittsburgh to fade. And I think that the majority of those teams are, but you're not just leapfrogging the teams that are already in the playoffs. You're leapfrogging a bunch of teams in front of you as well. So I think the Islanders are done. I think it's fair to say. It doesn't mean they won't win another game. I just don't see them making that final push. And but I agree with you. Minus 1.5 Dallas. That's my take. Andre, what do you see here?
Yeah, I'm also on the Dallas minus 1.5. Just the Islanders, I feel like can't get out of their own way, even when they do play well. You know, they'll take a lead and then it'll evaporate instantly. We saw it in the Stadium Series, and then we saw it their very next game against the Penguins, where they were up, let the Penguins force overtime, even though they got the 2 points in that game. Had to play a little bit extra for no reason because they gave up 2 late goals in the third. So the Stars offensively, usually really good. They are 4th in goals per game, struggling a bit. But at home against this Islanders team right now, I think it's the perfect get-right game for them. The Islanders have given up 4 goals in 3 straight games. They gave up 6 in the game before that. 2 games before that, they gave up 5. They're allowing a lot, and Dallas doesn't really need help. The Dallas power play is going up against the worst PK in the league. That could be a real spark for them. I think this is a game where the Stars get 4 or 5 themselves. They really need to. And the opportunities there with the way they've been playing. So I'm going to take them minus 1.5 in the over on their home ice.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point that just kind of jogged like my mind a little bit here is that Dallas has 78 points. I touched on it at the beginning of the show. They're 1 point ahead of the Jets, 3 points ahead of the Avalanche. I think especially, I mean, in both conferences, but especially in the West, I think winning your division is really, really important. And I do think that goes across all the divisions, both conferences. But if you get second place, you're playing Colorado, right? Or Winnipeg for that matter. If you get first, no disrespect to Nashville or St. Louis or Minnesota or Calgary or the Kings, whoever gets that second spot, maybe even the Kraken, that's a good matchup for Dallas, right? Like any of those teams. But if you got to play Colorado in that first round, Winnipeg in that first round, they want this division just as bad as the Islanders want to get to the playoffs. So that just kind of came to my mind. Also, really quickly, Brock Nelson, 3 goals, 23 shots, last 5 games. His shot prop for tonight is over 3.5 shots is plus 135. He is averaging just below 5 shots a game over his last 5 games. So over 3.5 for Brock Nelson at plus 135. I really like that prop tonight.
Just to add one thing real quick.
Yeah.
Wrap up the Islanders with a bow here.
Sure.
I'm mainly giving them one more week because Thursday they play the Red Wings head-to-head. I feel like if they lose that game or have a bad week, then I'm ready to just write them off. I still pretty much am ready to write them off, but I think that head-to-head on Thursday is like their last chance to do anything.
Sure. Yeah.
I still don't like their odds, though. I'm closer to your side for sure.
Well, it's an interesting side note here, and I'll just say this quickly and then we'll move on, but it just kind of reminded me, like both you guys watched these Philly games this weekend. They were playing your boys on Saturday, Andre, in that crazy game against Pittsburgh yesterday. Everyone is talking about Philly like if they make it to the playoffs, if they can hold on, if they can. Are people still not buying in on this Philly team? Like the fact that the Islanders might catch the Flyers to me is just kind of crazy. Like I don't, like everyone's talking about it. Like if they hold on, like this Flyers team is legit. And I don't think the Islanders are even half as legit as the Flyers are. It's really interesting conversation to me.
I'd be shocked. I don't see that happening.
I'm going as far as to say there's no chance that happens.
No, I'm like with you.
Full 0.
Oh, I love it.
I'm not even sure if I love the Devils to pass them at this point.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like, I don't know. It's at some point you are what you are, and it's March in like 5 days, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Islanders aren't going to pass them. I'm pretty confident saying that.
No. All right. Moving on. We've talked about the Islanders for way too long. Let's go to Edmonton, where I don't know if you guys have been paying attention. I know you guys have been, but the listeners and viewers out there. But Alberta had some phenomenal hockey this past weekend. Like there was some great hockey. Huge win by Calgary against Edmonton over the weekend. Some really good stuff, man. And even Vancouver, that Boston-Vancouver game was a lot of fun. But yeah, some phenomenal hockey. Calgary, Edmonton's been going through it a little bit here. They're minus 155. I mean, still they've lost like what? They've lost like 6 games since like November. So it is not the worst thing. We're not the worst thing in the world, but it's been a difficult-ish last couple weeks. Minus 155 at home against the Kings. Kings come into town. They are plus 130 on the road. Minus 1.5 for Edmonton is plus 145. Plus 1.5 for the Kings. Minus 175. The over is 6.5 at minus 112, and the under is minus 108. Kings 7-2 in their last 9. Since the 7-0 loss, they have allowed 13 goals over the last 6 games. So they're allowing just a little bit over 2 goals a game over the last 6. There's been a few games where they've like 1 goal allowed, a couple games with 4 goals allowed, but nevertheless, that's to only allow 13 in the last 6, and they allowed 7 against Buffalo. They're correcting what they need to. The Oilers 3-game losing streak, 4-6 since their streak, as I mentioned. I think the more interesting thing for me when it comes to the Oilers, and I don't know how much this matters facing the Kings, because the Kings haven't been a terrific goal scoring team. Even back when they were winning because of their defense and their goaltending, not because of their scoring. Edmonton has allowed 3+ goals in every game since that winning streak. 4 goals or more, 4 goals 3 times, 6 goals 3 times, and 3 goals the rest. So that's been interesting to me, because we talked about it when they were winning. Their goaltending was absolutely unreal, mostly when Skinner was in the net, but even when Pickard was in the net too, their goaltending was just phenomenal, and they're allowing a lot of goals lately. I don't know how much that matters against the Kings, but it does need to be noted. I think I'm picking the under here. I think we're going to see a really tight defensive game. I can see 3-2 game, maybe 4-2. I don't love the under, but if I'm going to pick a side, I just feel like the under is my favorite bet. I feel like the Oilers should self-correct here and win this game. But the Kings have been playing some good hockey right now. I think I'd rather just stick with the under and leave it at that. John, what about you, man? What do you see here?
I have a kind of a double take on this game. So there's two parts about this game I really like. One, I really like the Kings to win tonight. I feel like I think this is their time to pass Edmonton again. They've been slowly creeping up on them. You mentioned how well the Kings are playing, and the Oilers have slipped a little bit this weekend, losing kind of some heartbreakers to Minnesota and Calgary. This is also Edmonton's 3rd game in 4 nights, so I don't like that for Edmonton here, considering the type of team they're facing, with the Kings having the 3rd best the 3rd least goals allowed per game in the NHL, and the league's top penalty kills. So I think in a grind, Kings feel like a team you have to grind against, and Edmonton's going to have some tired legs heading into this. I realize they're playing all these games at home, but I still don't like that for them. So I do really like the Kings at plus 130. I think they'll also be motivated to pass Edmonton in the standings after slipping up in the middle of the year. Second part of this I like is the under. I really like the under 6.5 for pretty much the same reasons. Feel like the Kings are a great goaltending team. Edmonton's going to have some tired legs. And you mentioned it, Mark, the Kings don't really score a ton even when they play their best. So I think all of those factors make me lean towards the under 6.5 here. So Kings plus 130, under 6.5 total. I like both.
Love it. Look at you and me, John? Just 2 peas in a pod.
There we go.
Oh, yeah. Love it. Andre, what do you see here, man?
I agree with you guys fully on the under. I think regardless of who wins, that's the call of the game. The Kings have tightened up. They're not known for the offense generally, and the Oilers, if they are going to succeed, it's probably going to be on the strength of their goaltending. So I like the under also. It's a really good call by both of you. That being said, I feel pretty firm that I'm gonna take the Kings here. We brought up that there's a team in Alberta that's red hot right now, and it's definitely not the Oilers, who have lost three
Mhm.
straight, who have allowed at least 3 goals in every single game they've played this month. Excuse me. They're allowing 4.2 goals per game in February, which, again, against the Kings, not going to cut it. Not that they've got their groove back. Not that this team, not right now, while this team is, well, they've been better on the road all season. They have a 3-game winning streak on the road entering this one. It's a tough spot for Edmonton. I know it's the game they need better. I know they, in theory, have the higher potential, more talent, whatever. But if they give up 3 in this game, with the way the Kings are playing, they're probably going to lose 3-2. So I like not only the Kings money line, I would take the Kings 60-minute line at plus 220 here. I feel
Ooh,
very I feel very confident that they're going to win this game.
I
And
love
very
that.
confident.
Well, as you were talking, I was thinking about it. That game against Boston last week, was it Wednesday? I believe it was. That
Yeah.
game was insane. 6-5 in overtime. That game was wild. Then, speaking of wild, the game against the Wild. And then that game Saturday night against the Flames. Like, that was a physical game, a nasty game. And yeah, Edmonton kind of hung around for a bit, but Flames ended up like dominating them a lot for the most part. That I'm really interested to see kind of how Edmonton finds that resolve. You're talking about Wednesday night, Friday night, Saturday night. Tonight's Monday, right? You've only had 2 days off since that game against Boston last Wednesday. Maybe we're getting a bit of fatigue sitting in here because not only have you been playing a lot of games, those games have been intense. Like they've been really, really full games. So will be
Yep.
interesting to see moving forward.
Just Mark, real quick to
Yeah.
the backup thing that all of those games, those losses have in common is that Edmonton dug themselves a hole. Like they found
Yes.
themselves in a deficit early, had to climb out of it, and
It's a
couldn't
great
get 2
point.
points out of any of them. So, I mean, that's really the key for them in this one. If the Kings score first, or if the Kings take like a 2-goal, 3-goal lead, like the other teams Edmonton faced did, they're not gonna they're not gonna overcome that against a defense and a PK like theirs.
That's a great point. Yeah, very good point. You're right. They went behind early and often in all those games. Great point by you. Moving on to the last game of the evening, we go all the way over to Seattle, where the Boston Bruins, the aforementioned Boston Bruins, are in town to play the Seattle Kraken. Kraken fighting for that last wild card spot to crack in the playoffs. Not bad.
There you go.
Yeah. Trust me, ever since my son was born, my dad jokes are just they come in waves, man. They roll off the tongue. Seattle plus 120. Boston minus 142 favorites on the road. Minus 1.5 for the Bruins is plus 170. Plus 1.5 for the Kraken is minus 205. The over is 5.5 at minus 115, and the under is 5.5 as well, obviously at minus 105. John, we'll start with you. What do you see here, and why is it a draw? Because I feel like Boston goes into overtime every game they play. So
You took the words right out of my mouth because that was
yeah,
the first thing I was going to mention. Boston's
yeah,
been in 5 straight overtime games,
which is crazy.
and
Yeah,
6 of their
wow,
last 7 games have gone to overtime at least.
it's nuts.
Yeah, so you took the words right out of my mouth on that one. So, like Mark said, Boston's been in a crazy amount of overtime games recently, which I don't know how they're still standing in this situation. With all that said, Boston, straight up, Boston also has not been playing well in this stretch of games. I mentioned the fact that 6 of their last 7 have gone to overtime. In their last 8 games, Boston only has 2 wins. And I believe their last 2 games they picked but in their last 3 losses they've managed to pick up a point thanks to those overtime games. So they haven't been losing a terrible amount of points in this stretch, but they're not winning a lot of these games outright. They have just 2 wins. I think 2-3-3 is their overall record in the last 8 games. So definitely something Boston wants to correct here. In this case, I'm leaning towards Seattle for this reason. I don't really like the way Boston's playing right now. I think they've been playing in too many overtime games of late. So I feel like Boston's kind of been treading water of late, and I don't know. I'm skeptical if that's going to hold up, to be perfectly honest. I have to adjust the record I said, by the way. 2-2-4, like 2 regulation losses, 4 overtime losses, which is crazy, honestly. Yeah, I don't love the way Boston's playing, quite honestly. And against a solid goaltending team like Seattle, you mentioned the total's 5.5 in this game, right? So in that case, I could see why. I don't think Boston's a team I can rely on at the moment, and considering the amount of overtime games they've played, even if you like the Boston side, I wouldn't touch the 60-minute line. So I feel like if you're picking a side, you almost have to go Boston puck line or Seattle money line. And I'm personally leaning towards Seattle money line. I feel like they can pull it off in a game like this.
Yeah, I don't know. I might change my standing on this as the day goes on. We'll see how I feel later in the day, closer to puck drop. I might stay away from this game in all honesty. Just because, well, Boston 2-game losing streak, 3-7 in their last 10. To simplify it for you, John, I don't do the like loser point. They're 3-7.
Well, I tend to do too, honestly.
2-2-4, whatever. That extra it's stupid. It's 3-7. My brain functions way better that way. They're 3-7 in the last 10 games, 3+ goals allowed in 8 straight. And Seattle's not a juggernaut when it comes to scoring, but we'll see. Just like the Edmonton Kings game, right? Like, I don't know how much like Edmonton allowing a bunch of goals matters because the Kings don't score a bunch of goals. It's the same thing here. Boston's allowing a lot of scoring right now. Don't know how much that matters with Seattle, but it does make me nervous. Seattle, on the other hand, they're 4-6 in their last 10. So Boston's clearly the better team. I just think they're not playing their best hockey right now. They're getting a point in every game by the skin of their teeth. So to me, I just kind of stay away from this game. I would maybe lean Boston on the 60-minute line, but we talked about it at the beginning of this segment. They've gone to overtime in 34 of their last 35 games, right? So it's like, I don't know what to really, the 60-minute line, Boston really is plus 100. It should be like plus like 160. Like, you know what I mean? So for me, I'm staying away. If I have to pick, I'd probably also lean towards the under, but I'm going to stay away from this game. But listen, draw, that means going to overtime, plus 300, which I feel like is pretty low in normal draw bets. So that's kind of where I'm at with this one. Andre, finish it off, man. What do you see in this game tonight?
Well, Mark, you mentioned the Bruins allowing 3+ goals in 8 straight, right? It was 8, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. So I had looked it up because I actually was digging into this. The Kraken over 2.5 goals is minus 120. Not crazy odds, but it's also not a crazy goal total. You think the average NHL team is scoring 3 goals in a game, win or lose. That's generally how it goes. I know it's the Bruins, but just thought I'd float that one out there. Looking at this game, kind of picking on the schedule here and pulling a John a little bit. Since these teams met in Boston, a 4-1 Kraken win that didn't require overtime. Go figure. The one time they didn't have an extra 5 minutes. But since that game, the Bruins have played 5 times, all of them in overtime. The last 3 on the road on the West Coast. Kraken have only played 3 times, all at home. I think rest and travel is going to be a huge factor in this one. Obviously, the Bruins are the better team, but Seattle hasn't gone anywhere, and they've had a lot more time off. They've had a lot more time to heal. They haven't been playing in overtime every night, and the record in their last 5 games is just as good as Boston's. They're playing decently. So on home ice, I think I have to lean with the Kraken. I forgot to mention, it feels like the top spot in the East is cursed. Every time someone takes the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, they just decide, I'm going to lose a couple. Why not? Boston's currently tied with the Rangers in points for that top spot, so you have to think at best they're getting an OT loss in this one because nobody's getting 2 points at first right now. I like the Kraken money line here. I think they're going to pull it off again against the Bruins team.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Taking our fandom out of it, this East, like the playoffs in general, are going to be phenomenal. Like I just, there's not one round. If the playoffs were to start tomorrow or tonight, for that matter, there's not one round that I would not be excited about. Even like Dallas, Nashville. Like that has some compelling, like you don't think Nashville could squeak out a cockroachy 7-game series win, man? Like there's just a lot of really good Vancouver and the Kings. Like there's some it would be Vancouver, Nashville, Dallas Kings. There's just some really, really fun matchups all across the playoffs. So we'll see what happens down the stretch. I'm still pulling for you, John. I'm still pulling for you, man. I think the playoffs would be much more fun if your team's involved. So I'm rooting for you, man. And if you could take care of the Lightning, just get them out of my face. I've seen them in the playoffs like every year. I'm done. So get them out of there. And I'm rooting for you, bro. All right, let's move on to our best bets, brought to you by none other than First Round Collectibles. With the promo code Sports Addict, you get 10% off whatever sports card your heart desires. Hockey, football, basketball, baseball, wrestling, boxing, it doesn't matter. First Round has it. They have sales items still left over from Christmas, up to 50% off. With the promo code Sports Addict, not only do you get 10% off of the regular priced items, but also the sale items. So go to firstroundcollectibles.com today. There are plenty, dozens, hundreds of sports cards to choose from. First Round Collectibles, that's the number 1, STRoundcollectibles.com. Promo code Sports Addict, 10% off. First Round Collectibles, sports cards for sports fans. John, why don't we start with you, bro? What is your best bet on a Monday night? It is Monday, right? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Monday night.
All right. So we have a couple interesting ones here. I do like the Seattle money line, but not enough to make it a best bet. Just too many wild games for the Bruins recently. I think I'm gonna go to Edmonton for this one. I feel strangely confident about an under 6.5 there. I really like it. I almost took the Kings money line as the best bet, but I feel like that's going too far.
I thought you were going there.
I almost did, but I feel like the under is the safer play there to take. Like I said before, Edmonton, 3rd game in 4 nights, going up against the best penalty kill and the 3rd best goaltending team in the NHL. So I don't really, and the Kings are just generally not a high scoring team. Don't think that will go over 6.5. So under 6.5, my best in Kings Oilers, my best bet of the day.
I think it's an honorable mention, John. Congratulations. You won your best bet on Friday. Tough week for you overall, but you know what, John? You can't win your money back if you don't lose it all in the first place. Remember that. So it's the beginning of some good things. You're on your way. Absolutely love to see it. Congratulations, and here's to a phenomenal week for our main man, John Unk, as we have been known to call him. Andre, on to you, man. What's your best bet tonight, bro?
Just before I get into that, there was a big jump in the Ottawa Washington game, like for the odds. I thought that was really interesting. I don't know what it means, but
Let
Senators
me
now
look.
minus 130. Capitals are or
Whoa.
135. Capitals are plus 114. So
Wow.
What did I have it at before?
it was
Jeez.
minus 118, minus 102.
That's
Like it's jumped to,
huge.
yeah.
Interesting. All right.
Did notice that. Uh, Now, best bet. I am going to go with the Dallas Stars minus 1.5. This Islanders team is not getting stops right now. Dangerous spot to be in when you're headed to Dallas against that offense. And then their own offense, talking about the Islanders, isn't really scoring that much either. 2 goals against Tampa, shutout against the Blues. Good games against the Penguins and the Rangers, but before that, only 1 goal against the Kraken, 2 goals against the Flames. They're just not playing well. They got a tough team that's also just as hungry, and they're going to their barn. I think it's a terrible matchup for them. So I think the Stars win this game by multiple goals. And you should be proud of me because I wanted to pick a power play point for Jason Robertson, but I didn't. So
I'm always proud of you, man. Always. All right. I'm just pulling up something here that I was looking for. Oh, here we go. All right. So I like a lot of good plays here tonight. I like Ottawa tonight. I was thinking about that money line, but like you said, Andre, it jumped to minus 135. I feel like that's going to come back down before puck drop. I feel like a lot of people are going to see that and jump on the Washington side of things. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out towards the end of the day. I like the Stars as well, which you took. I don't lean strongly on the Kings or the Oilers. I lean Kings, but not enough like you, John, for a best bet. The Boston game, I'm kind of staying away from that. So I'm going to go back to the prop market, and I'm going to go to what I mentioned when we talked about the Islanders and the Stars. Really don't like the Islanders to win. I 100% back the minus 1.5 puck line for Dallas. However, Brock Nelson over 3.5 shots plus 135. I mentioned it earlier. He has 23 shots in his last 5 games, averaging just below 5 shots per game. In his last so he had 4 shots in his last game, 5 shots game before that, 8 shots game before that, 3 shots 2 games in a row, but then 4 shots and 6 shots. He's shooting the puck a lot. Only 2 games out of the previous 7 has he gone below 4, and he got 3. So he's shooting the puck a lot. I really like Brock Nelson over 3.5. I've been seeing the shot market fairly well. As you mentioned, Andre, Friday night, the Eriksson Ek, that didn't bode well for me on Friday, but that's my best bet. Brock Nelson over 3.5, plus 135 against the Stars tonight. I like that prop a lot.
yeah, and that plus 135, it's almost the highest odds. Wouldn't have expected that from a shot prop, but
Yeah.
Brock Nelson over 3.5 shots, that plus 135. Stars puck line plus 140. Those two parlay together is plus 465. You add the King Oilers under 6.5 and minus 108 from John. You have a plus 988 3-pick parlay.
Love it. I actually really like this tonight. I think the Kings Oilers under is like the hairiest one, just because it's the Oilers. But but I really, really do like that bet, and I love these best bets tonight, boys. Good job. All right, good stuff today. Thank you very much to everybody for of course, thank you, John, Andre. Great stuff as always. Thank you, everybody, for watching or listening, whether you're watching live, whether you are watching throughout the day, whenever, wherever, doesn't matter to us. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Shout out to Total Apex Sports for allowing us to be on their feed. We appreciate you guys, Dusty, Vin, the whole crew. Thank you to First Round Collectibles. Again, promo code Sports Addict, 10% off regular priced items, sale items. It doesn't matter. You can get it at firstroundcollectibles.com. Good luck on your bets. John, Andre, we'll talk to you guys throughout the evening. We'll see the rest of you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
Go hard.